Jeremy, next up. You don't mind popping up to the here and
no pressure, Jeremy. It's all worked fine so far.
Yeah.
warm welcome to us, and again, following on from the development work we did last week, and the work of your group, and following on from Pat's great work around the review of the extended variation. Operational productivity, your paper, and take it as read. How are you settling in?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, I was catching up doing yesterday, so I wouldn't say too much, but it's great to be here compared to where I was before.
Next.
Do you want me to?
Yes, just briefly introduce the paper, take it that we read it and stuff, and highlight anything you want to highlight, then we'll get it over to questions.
So, a couple of things I want to highlight. So, principally involved with implementing the 137 recommendations, tasks and actions within Patrick's report. So critically also never stopping to look for unwarranted variation where it exists in the system when it comes to productivity, and obviously quality you can't look at productivity without looking at quality at the same time. We had 35 of those tasks and recommendations due to be done by now. We've got 29 of them done, and the remaining 6 will be done by October. So we're catching up on the few that have slipped. As well as the acutes, we're also starting, which isn't mentioned in here, we're going to look at the mental health and community sector from next month as well, which was one of Patrick's recommendations that we need to get into that space as well. Broadly, the priority projects at the moment are the first 3 that are listed in the paper, which is pathology, back office, corporate services, and procurement. We're motoring ahead as fast as we can on that. The key issue at the moment is getting the data in, the baseline, how people are performing in terms of their costs in these areas, the basics from cost per test, cost per patient, all of those sorts of things. And by the middle of next month, we will have a baseline to see where the variation is across the country on that, as well as a better understanding of where Trust and SDP plans to make improvements in that are. So yeah, quite a critical time towards the end of October as we put those 2 together and see where the gaps are and where we might need to be doing more to encourage people to go for the opportunities that exist. In the area of people and the clinical workforce productivity in particular, we're continuing to make progress with Ruth and team on the nursing side and the care outpatient day. Critical aspects to that are to ensure that the links to patient acuity as well as the costs of providing that care are an essential part of that triangle really. And in development of the dashboards and how we present the data and win the hearts and minds of the nursing profession in doing that, it's really important to keep those 3 together. On doctor productivity, Tim Evans has made great progress engaging with his clinical colleagues. You've seen there, he's met with all of the medical directors from the 120 acute trusts. We've had them in. He's working in depth with 40 of them to really understand their job planning and how effective they are at doing that, basically allocating doctors and what output they get from that. And on the allied health professionals, in summary, it's really a mix of the 2 above, because of the big diversity of roles that AHPs perform in acute trusts. So the mixture of job planning as well as something equivalent to a care outpatient day for those groups, and we're busy trying to standardise the data and the assessment of that. Get it right first time. A lot of you heard Tim Briggs and Tim Evans talk about that in the development session last week. We keep saying this, but we're very close to getting agreement with DH to get the funding to scale this up. That will be a big, don't underestimate the challenge. That will be moving from what essentially has been a pilot in trauma and orthopaedics to all specialties in that, and we will have to work closely with Kathy, the Royal Colleges and others to check we're all in step with that on all the other initiatives that are going on in the clinical space. One of the most productive areas in terms of savings and efficiencies so far has been hospital pharmacy and medicines. You'll see as an example in the paper of 53 million saved by moving to a biosimilar already on that. And there's a good team. That is a great example of where whole model of how we operate works, where we get the data in, we look for the variation in the system, we present it back to the people at the front line, the managers and the clinicians in there, get them to realise for themselves that they have this unwarranted variation and do something about it, and they act accordingly, and that's the result. And it's also better for the patient on there as well. Estates and facilities, there was a big number in Patrick's report to be achieved on that. If we can get everyone to the mean cost of running their estate and facilities, there's £1 billion to be achieved in that, and subsequent analysis has recognised as found that there's 27 trusts that contribute 80% of that. There will also be the most difficult 27, but it's where we need to concentrate our support and help in that. And then again, as you saw last week, the model hospital is the place where we bring a lot of this information together to try and make it as usable to the front line and ourselves here in NHS as possible. And we constantly iterate and develop that and push material out on an agile basis, but I explained that to most of you last week about how we do that. Just a quick bit on the support offering. As we scale up and build up, when we're in steady state, we'll be about 150 people supporting this work, which half should be out in the regions, working with regional colleagues directly to support them do it, and half doing the standardisation, the data collection churn, and understanding what good looks like in central teams. I'm about 2/3 of the work, sorry, I wish I was. I'm about 1/3 of the way there at the moment now. So the support that we're providing at the moment is quite bespoke and targeted to where regional colleagues and other colleagues want us to go and help out. But I think there's a bit of work to be done with colleagues, with Stephen and Bob and Jim in particular, about how we can help a bit more targeted on the special measures, the segment 4, as we get there over the next few weeks. Can we do that?
Thank you, Jeremy. Helpful. I'm going to ask Pat to come in and say, Pat, where are you on the report that Jeremy's made, the progress, the level of ambition to date? Because we got off to a potentially slightly slower start than we would have liked. Do you feel we're ramping up now in accordance with your recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, Chairman, to answer your question, I mean, I think the ambition hasn't changed, and I think all we're hearing is it's the doability of it's confirmed. I mean, so that should remain. I agree with you. I think we were slow to ramp up, but looking at the progress now and going through some of these reports, I think we're gaining momentum if that can be maintained. And essentially the cooperation with colleagues in regions and Stephen's team, it's getting everybody now aligned to actually make that work. The resources are there, I believe, and I think the organisation's coming together to deliver it. So I think had you asked me that 8 weeks ago, I'd be less positive, and I'm significantly positive now.
I'm pleased I've asked you now rather than 8 weeks ago. Ara.
This is great. I'm a great fan of the Carter Review and some wonderful nuggets in there. I'm trying to figure this out a little bigger picture. It says Productivity Directorate. Productivity is, how do you maximize your output or set of inputs? This has a mixed bag of other things, efficiencies and this and that. So how does that fit in? But also, how does it fit in within improvement faculty? We are now creating silos within, and we need to make sure we don't do that. The message needs to be quite clear when you come to me as a CEO that this is, one person saw me as sort of leading the Carter Review, another person saw me as part of the NHS improvement faculty, and the other one is the efficiency, the savings.
Absolutely, which is why we want, in our house, we want these activities. Jim.
We touched on this yesterday, so I think that's again one of those work in progress things, Ara. So
Yeah.
it came across partway through our change process.
Yeah.
We're trying really hard now to integrate all of this into the mainstream, so this is business as usual, it's mainstream, it's connected with everything that we do. And one example would be, we've just agreed as an exec team to set up a mechanism to review performance in the round, and we'll start that by looking at the kind of normal performance and the Carter work separately, and then they'll migrate over a couple of months, and we'll have a much more blended picture. But there is a danger that will just create little unhelpful silos across the organisation. So first of all, we're alert to it, and we're trying to blend it as quickly as we can.
Which also brings in, if I was the doc on the shop floor, I'm the surgeon in the operating theatre, I will love Lord Carter. It's going to increase my productivity because I'm going to get the patient on the table at 8:30. I'm going to have 5-minute break between cases. I'm going to have anaesthetist available in the recovery. I will say, this might be my Bible in getting my activity, because there's a lot of frustration. We need to get the narrative right around this and setting it out, because saying that we're going to measure doctor productivity rather than saying we're going to enable you to be more productive by providing your infrastructure, providing your IT, that's the other thing, is how do we get that message across and make that a win for us and them?
I think it's a really...
I'm going to measure what you're going to do, Doc, because I'm going to look at your sessions and I'm going to reduce them.
Very powerful points, and I think this comes back to how do we hone the communications of this. I was at Papworth on Tuesday. Really interesting conversation with the clinicians about what do they need and what do they see, and it's about flow, it's about things. But actually, the chairman of Papworth significantly has reduced the number of valves available to clinicians to buy, because the range of valves is true. I'm going to get out of my depth pretty fast, but it was quite interesting to see that. They've done things like put a canteen, but a lunchroom for the surgeons inside the operating environment to help flow and stuff. I was at York yesterday. The way in which data was being used to support the flow of renal patients through the system and create different models. And talking to the chief medical officer, the medical director, it's fantastic to see stuff going on there, which comes back to how do we capture that? How do we get it into an improvement psyche across organisations, and at the same time link it to overall productivity? So points really well made. Caroline, then Richard.
If I could just build on that, because I think it's the, speaking as a sort of layperson, the most impressive things I've heard since I became a non-exec were the clinicians talking about how you can change ways of operating, and the infections in when you do hip operations, the deep infections, how the variation is between 0.5% and 15% or something, extraordinary variation, and listening to them talking with passion about how they improve that is very persuasive. So what I'm quite interested in is how within NHSI your nascent group is working with nursing and Kathy, with Ruth and Kathy, to develop strategies for how you bring the clinicians along with it and the medical staff along, because that's very important that we don't have internal barriers.
So I'm really clear this is a clinically, jointly clinically led and administrative led program. That's what I was out in the States a few weeks ago, seeing how they've driven improvement, and they call it the dyad. So whenever in their clinical service lines or ad hoc improvements, whether it's Mayo, Tenet, anywhere you go, they always go for the dyad approach, where you have a clinician and an operator leading it. So in the two really big areas on clinical efficiency and quality and clinical productivity, the two biggest teams of the lot, it's Briggs, Professor Briggs is one half, and the other half is an operator, and then the other team is Professor Tim Evans, and then the other half we're yet to appoint will be an operator as well. We're also, I know it's a ghastly management speak work, but we're matrixing this work. So with Ruth, for example, I've actually less than matrix. I've completely relied on Ruth's team to progress on the nursing side while I'm building up on that, and we'll maintain it that way. It's fantastic input from Mark Radford on that. And with Kathy and colleagues there, we've created, because it's more than just Kathy, it's quite a complex landscape, isn't it, Kathy, and our clinical colleagues. We've formed a group grandly called the National Clinical Governance Group, which includes Bruce Keogh, Mike Richards, and various others. There's another Mike somewhere in the mix as well. That's right. Who got together to make sure that everybody's aware of what's going on. We're not troubling on other people's feet.
Good. Richard, and then Sigurd.
And my question is about scaling up and then prioritisation until you scale up. So your steady state's 150
Yeah.
people. In the papers at the moment, we've got offers out to 5.
It's gone up.
So it's quite a long way to go, Joe.
There is.
On that, and it's and two questions. One is the pace at which you can scale up. It's clearly essential we scale up as quickly as we possibly can. You've also got to scale up with all the right people.
Yeah, exactly.
For this, and government has not got a particularly good track record of doing that, getting the people in quickly with the capabilities you need in these type of areas. So it's a question about how quickly you can do it. And then in the interim, how you prioritise that time. So we've got, I don't know how many it is, Bob, 5, 6 organisations in financial special measures because their finances are so awful. It would be good to be able to demonstrate that these sorts of things, you can really focus your attention in those organisations where the finances are totally shot already. So yeah, I'm just trying to think about scale of pace of sort of scaling up, and then in the interim, how you prioritise what's going to be a very limited resource for some time, I guess.
So you're absolutely right, Richard. I'm not rushing it and getting the wrong people in and regretting it later. It's gone up to 7 offers today, and 24 job adverts out. The process, I have to say that the process compared to most of my life in the public service, it has been quicker and more efficient here in terms of getting things through. There's still scope for improvement, but there's more flexibility in terms of getting people in to cover gaps and scale up for short term than I have been elsewhere. So, for example, I've got two firms and consultancies just in for a few weeks to bridge the gap on the back office and pathology work, who are under a tight rein. They're effectively part of the team. I've not sent them away to go and do 8 weeks work and come back with a slide deck. They are part of the team, and they had a rigorous challenge from Lord Carter himself this morning in our programme board on that. I'd say I want to be up to 2/3 by January in terms of capability, and from January I want to have worked out with the regions how we make this more of a routine cycle about how we get in and help. And it's all linked to the development of the single oversight framework and the segmentation. So this is not just an issue for my directorate, it's across our organisation about how we do it. So I'm sort of going to segue over to Jim about the prioritisation piece and how we might get involved.
On the special measures,
Yep.
So I think we've all had a discussion in the last couple of days, and we're absolutely going to do that. And Stephen and Jeremy and Bob have already had a conversation. So those that are in special measures, we are looking at trying to accelerate delivery of this programme in those areas first. We haven't quite worked out who and how and stuff, but we'll do that over the next week.
Sigurd.
A comment and then a question. The comment really is just to add to Richard's point that what obviously welcome as all the cost savings are, what I see is that the greatest potential really is the improved patient results by working in the clinical areas. In a sense, what you're looking at here is sort of peanuts compared to the big prize that is available to us from greater productivity on the clinical side, and I hope we don't lose sight of that, even as we go for the low-hanging fruit, if I can use that phrase. But the question is, there's another paper floating around about the role of the improvement function and so on. Would I be right to think that to avoid, coming back to the first part of your question, Ara, about silos and not falling over ourselves, is there a thought in here that what Jeremy is developing is the toolkit, the toolbox, if you like, that will be made available to people, and that the improvement directorate will be, or the improvement folk, I hate the term directorate actually, are the people who are going to be the army to help bring that all about? Is that the idea?
The two Tims are members of the improvement faculty, and so they're there and able to offer if there's an issue somewhere and it lends itself to this approach, they'll bring that to the table and make sure that happens. So that's the idea there. Also in the improvement faculty, you've got people who are experts in patient engagement, public engagement, microsystems, Seattle stuff, etc. So it's kind of a mixed bag. But this does need to be one of the key planks of our improvement of
Yes.
methodology.
Yeah.
If we turn up somewhere that's got a productivity or a flow or a financial issue, it should be the first tool in the box.
Yes.
It should be the first thing we go for. And it will be over time. So I think by the time we hit the end of this year, this financial year, that has to be established as our mechanism.
Right. But that is the distinction you see. Jeremy's responsibility is to provide the tools, and the improvement people will be.
I don't think it's. I mean, let's come back to
Okay.
to this, Sigurd. I don't think it's quite as sort of black and white as that. And I
Okay.
think we have to be very clear that we are one team.
Yes.
We will get some. We're working through a regional focus, as
Yes.
Jeremy said, and the improvement faculty is also part of a regional focus. So,
Yeah.
so it's not a wall with certain activities here being thrown over the wall.
Okay.
It's more porous than that. Let's go back to when we come back to a development
Yep.
approach about which we'll do in October, about how the organisation itself is developing and how we are developing as an executive team and board. That then works. Steve, did you actually want to add anything?
Well, it was just a prioritisation point that Richard raised, and Pat and I met earlier this week, and we are, I haven't had a chance to loop in Jeremy yet, but the idea will be to absolutely, as Jeremy builds up resource, to prioritise it on trust and special measures, financial special measures, but also there are one or two others that may not be financial special measures, but are making very big losses that we want to target as well.
So I think we welcome this, and we need more strikers and balls on the pitch, because there are lots of goals there to be scored. 2 points from me. One, as colleagues know, I'd joined the NHS Property Services Board, so that we're creating this sort of linkages between different parts of the health service. It would be really helpful, because they've done some very good work on FM. The work we do on estates and facilities is linked to the work that they've already done on very significant savings within the FM rationalisation. And secondly, on procurement, have we got a expected savings from these 12 mandated items?
The 12, yes. So there's 100 million spent on at the moment, and the optimistic scenario is 25 million.
So we look forward to you being able to tell us that we've saved 25 million in due course, because
Yeah.
we have fabulous information systems that will record that
We
information.
have.
Very good. Well, look, alongside my thanks to Ben earlier, my thanks to you for coming on board and for driving this and building the team. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so next item, STARD, and Jim, you're going to take the improvement report, because Adam is out and about, I think, today,
Yeah.
improving.
So just very briefly, there's a lot going on in the improvement arena, as you can see from the report. There's been a really big focus in recent weeks about crystallising what our offer is. So it's all right talking about improvement, we're just trying to get to the point where we are, using the oversight framework and the segmentation, etc., more clear. What does that actually mean? So a lot of organisations have come back to us. We've had some useful work through ESIT and other contributions there, but there is a need for us to just be really crystal clear what's what we can do, but what we expect that local organisation to do. So there's a lot of work in hand there, which I'm sure I'll explain later on when he is here. On the well-led framework, I think the thing I would draw out here is the alignment with CQC. We're absolutely on the same page about doing this together. It's developing, quite quickly. So over the next few months, we'll have a process and a framework there that is completely shared, aligned, and looks absolutely joined up to the service. Because there have been cases where we've had different views on organisations, that's just really unhelpful. So we'll recognise that it's in hand. There's a spin-off of that in terms of sharing intelligence and data. So we have a shared system eventually that has a single view of what should give us cause for concern in the sector, and then drive our improvement and intervention from there. Really big focus recently on the leadership development, which you'll be aware is a big priority for us. Really well received. Documented the improvement faculty last week, so really keen to get into this now and turn this into real life. So I'll probably just stop there other than maybe just mention item 15, digital outpatient, some really fantastic work going on with some private technology partners, with ours organisation of Imperial and some other contributors, which were really aim to transform the outpatient service from an old kind of corner shop business model to one that's fit for the future. So probably in about January time we'll come back and share in a more practical sense what that actually means.
Good. Questions on this, which again is good progress, and I think, Sigurd, you can see the link in the back pages
Well, that was
to
what was behind my question,
the
yeah.
operational.
Exactly.
And Glynis has been involved in reviewing with me the National Improvement and Leadership Development Framework. I think you yourself saw that this week,
Yeah.
and things, and we are getting to the process where we do have to drive this, make sure it comes live. It is a long-term approach, but we need to get to some quick deliverables as well. We've probably disinvested in this over a period of years, and it's as much cultural as anything else. I hope that colleagues that have seen this framework, and as we go forward to endorsing it over the next 2 or 3 weeks, are supportive. Glynis, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, not really. I think you've covered it.
I'd just
Aaron.
say it's a brilliant document, absolutely fantastic.
How you execute.
No, it's not that. I think the first part of the execution is for us in the system to behave that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether you CQC or NHSI or NHSE, you know, some of the behaviors that we very clearly described. That's
Yeah.
what we need to get out. So interesting to. It's a great start to do that, and I think it's a brilliant document. I think it will go down extremely well.
Thank you very much, and we should congratulate the teams that have put that together. It's been a year in progress, and as a sort of person who's quite frustrated about how we get pace into this, it would have been great to have it done, but it's been done properly. And as you say, Aaron, that type of thing starts with us as leaders of the system. I hope that colleagues will see that we have already been making progress on some of those behaviours with other arm's length bodies, but there's a way to go. Very good, thank you.